Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. We are coming to you live from the Palestine Chronicle studio in Washington. I have with me my co-host of Palestine Chronicle TV, Romana Rubio from Rome. Uh, we are here to cover the events that are happening in Gaza and in Jerusalem, the Israeli escalation in Gaza in particular. 9 Palestinians, including 3 children, were reportedly killed in the town of Beit Hanun in northern Gaza. And of course, the situation continues to escalate in Al-Aqsa Mosque and in the Old City in Jerusalem, where thousands of people are currently inside the mosque, and we are going to take you to some live footage from there. And we have with us also our correspondent in Gaza, Wafa Al-Udaini, who is going to be giving us the latest updates from there. Romana is going to be helping us. Of course, we continue to work on the Palestine Chronicle live blog, and Romana is going to be sharing this with everyone here in a second in the comment section. We are going to be with you for as long as we can. Please do excuse me. It's Ramadan and I'm fasting, so my voice is not going to be as strong as usual. Your comments, your ideas, your feedback are greatly appreciated. I think here we are talking about a state of war in Palestine. The Israeli army has declared that it is ready for a full-scale escalation, or rather full-scale operations in the Gaza Strip, whatever that means. We always know that this usually means the high death toll among Palestinians, as we have seen in the town of Beit Hanun this morning. So please be patient. Please stay with us. And as we continue to update you with some news, first, let's go. I'm going to share my screen here and take you to some live footage from Gaza. This is Gaza almost live. That was about an hour or so ago. You see here, an unprecedented escalation. Really, we haven't seen this for quite some time now. Israeli rockets once more falling on Gaza. Palestinian resistance rockets as well have been reported in Ashdod or Ashdod. And of course, some rockets have fallen, or the Al-Qassam resistance operation in Gaza says that the rockets have been fired at the Jerusalem area. Now, this is really this interesting escalation. Of course, mainstream media doesn't tell you this. Sadly, this is what the media is reporting, that Israel is responding to Palestinian escalation. But as most of you, our dear readers and followers of the Palestine Chronicle, and people who are following the Palestinian story from Palestinian sources, know very well that Israel has been escalating in the Old City in Jerusalem, in throughout the entirety of East Jerusalem, and especially at the holy shrines in Al-Aqsa Mosque for many days now. Hundreds of Palestinians just yesterday were wounded in this Israeli escalation, including ambulance drivers and medics. And since Palestinians do not perceive Jerusalem to be anything but an integral part of Palestine, naturally Palestinians had to respond, whether they are in the West Bank or in Gaza. So a few days ago, the resistance in Gaza issued a warning to Israel that if they do not cease their escalation by 6 p.m. This evening, Palestine time, they are going to respond. Very little of that was reported, and Israel, of course, did not heed that warning, and as a result, Palestinian rockets were fired at Israel. We haven't really heard of any casualties.
I'm sorry, Ramzi. There is a breaking news. 20 minutes ago,
Yes.
a huge blaze broke out in the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, and it was visible from various parts of the city of Jerusalem. So the cause of the
And
blaze,
what is the source on that news, Romana?
it's Al Jazeera and several sources, even social media sources online. There are videos. I'm gonna try to share the video of the blaze that unfortunately invested the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound a few minutes ago.
Okay, this is an extremely dangerous escalation, because now we are going from a state of violence in Palestine, instigated, of course, by Israel and the Israeli occupation, into something else entirely. This is uncharted territory, or at least uncharted territory for a long time. And as we know that there is a great deal of anger building up throughout the world, not just in the Arab and Muslim world, but worldwide, really, we have seen a great deal of solidarity and support for Palestine coming from pretty much every country around the world, because of what Israel is doing in Palestine, especially the ethnic cleansing that is taking place in Sheikh Jarrah, which really is the start of the story. In fact, at the Palestinian Chronicle, we have an editorial about the Nakba of Sheikh Jarrah. We were the first to coin that term, really, where we basically try to link up the events. Again, this is something that you do not see on mainstream media, whether out of sheer laziness or deliberate, where you really do not see how events are connected to one another. This whole thing started with a court decision in February to ethnically cleanse many Palestinian families from their homes, from their ancestral homes in East Jerusalem, in Sheikh Jarrah. People of Jerusalem have been launching a campaign of popular resistance against Israel, unarmed, peaceful resistance demanding a reversal of the court decision. But of course, there has been very little response from Israel. To the contrary, the court carried on with equally unfair decisions. The settlers, the extremist Jewish settlers, have been gathering in Jerusalem in their thousands, even during the month of Ramadan, while people are fasting, taunting Palestinians, carrying out various acts of violence against Palestinians, and Palestinians carried on with the resistance as usual. Of course, history have taught us that you cannot maintain this kind of pressure for eternity. There has to be a breaking point. And the breaking point came this morning when, or rather this evening, when Gazan resistance, or the Gaza resistance, fired rockets at Israel. Again, we do not know if there has been any injuries among Israelis. The news are quite limited coming from Israel. All we know that the Israeli rockets have tried to intercept the Palestinian rockets, and we know that they have only intercepted one of them. The rest fell somewhere undefined so far. But again, this is really the context of the story. So please, if anybody comes and says to you, well, the Palestinians fired rockets at Israel, remind them of the timeline. And you know what? If we want to stretch this a little bit more, we could also remind them of the timeline of the fact that Palestinians are an occupied people living under a system of apartheid and ethnic cleansing that has been taking place for many years, even Human Rights Watch and the Israeli rights group B'Tselem, who have been quite guarded in the usage of language regarding this particular issue, are now saying outright that Israel, all of Israel, from the river to the sea, is an apartheid state. So this is a very important context. Yes, Romana.
We have the video of the explosion in
Okay,
the
so let me stop the sharing.
Yes, thank you. And yeah.
Romana, let's play this video again for those who are joining us. It
Yeah.
seems that parts of Al-Aqsa, we don't know which part exactly, but seems to be on fire. How this fire got started, we don't know the story yet. Go ahead, Romana.
Yeah, sure.
Now you could see in the background, you could see the Dome of the Rock. Now I think we have to make an important distinction here, and I'm going to take you back to the live stream in a moment here. But I think there's a very important distinction now. The entirety of the compound is called Al-Haram Al-Sharif, the sacred, or the Al-Haram Al-Sharif, the holy sanctuary. I think Wafa Al-Odaini is going to be joining us here in a second, and we are gonna bring her in a second. But the sanctuary has the Dome of the Rock, which is this beautiful mosque with the golden top, and it also has Al-Aqsa Mosque. Sometimes people mix between both. In the background of that video, where there is a big fire that is raging somewhere within that compound, we see the Dome of the Rock in the background. We do not know, we cannot decipher as of yet if the fire is taking place within Al-Aqsa Mosque itself, near Al-Aqsa Mosque, or where exactly in Al-Haram Al-Sharif. I'm going to bring in Wafa Al-Udaini, who is a wonderful journalist living in Gaza, and she quite often report to us, the Palestine Chronicle, about the situation in Gaza. Wafa, welcome to Palestine Chronicle TV. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Thank you so much, Dr. Ramzi, for having me again. And yeah, I can hear you well. Thank you.
Of course, Wafa, if you could just update us on what happened in Gaza this evening, and what is the situation like right now?
Yeah, actually, the condition at the moment, the situation at the moment, I think it's gonna be escalation here in Gaza, because as I can hear, Gaza sky is full of Israeli warplanes. I can hear them clearly, and we can hear explosion, like massive explosion. Ago, as you mentioned to the audience, yeah, the Palestinian resistance here in Gaza, after warning the Israeli occupation forces, yeah, they just fired rockets into Israel, and yeah, until now the Palestinian resistance here are still firing these rockets, and yeah, we have till now we have 9 Palestinians got massacred. So far, 3 of them children. And we can say that also there is, maybe some of your audience asking, why is this escalation and why it is now? And here we can say that, like a few days ago, like 2 days or 3 days ago, there is tension inside Al-Aqsa Mosque, and the Israeli occupation forces and the Israeli settlers storm Al-Aqsa Mosque and they provoke the Palestinian worshippers during the holy month of Ramadan. And they just like storm Al-Aqsa Mosque and they have nothing to do with Al-Aqsa Mosque, but they just storm it just to provoke the Palestinians. And then, so many, confrontation erupted there inside Al-Aqsa Mosque, and over the 200 or nearly 700 Palestinians got injured inside Al-Aqsa Mosque while they were praying inside Al-Aqsa Mosque. And we can just see in the videos that so many, the Israeli occupation forces, they just fire, like tear gas canisters, and they fire rubber pellet into the Palestinians inside Al-Aqsa Mosque. So all of these stuff actually provoke the Palestinians everywhere, not only in Jerusalem, also in the Gaza Strip, in the West Bank, and in every Palestinian, and every human being across the world. Just peaceful, unarmed people, and they are just got attacked by the armed teeth Israeli soldiers. Like Gaza, actually, the people of Gaza, we can say like a week ago or 2 weeks ago, the people themselves, they just took the streets randomly without planning. They just took the streets, and whenever they saw what is happening in Sheikh Jarrah, what is happening in Al-Aqsa Mosque, they just took the street and they protest peacefully. Some of them, they went to the separation fence with Israel, and they protest there also peacefully. But despite all of that, they protest peacefully, and they speak up that this thing, what is happening in Al-Aqsa Mosque and in Sheikh Jarrah, it has to be stopped. But indeed, it doesn't stop, and the occupation that just humiliate Palestinians and attack children, attack women. This morning we saw like videos that really heartbreaking. When we saw that women got injured and they got attacked by those armed Israeli soldiers. So all of this stuff actually, we can say that boiled the situation here in Gaza. So everybody asked the resistance here in Gaza to respond for the Israeli actions against Palestinians in Jerusalem. And even those in Jerusalem, they also, they know that Gaza is under siege, and everything here is under, we can say, on the brink of collapse. But they don't, they know that they have nothing to do with the power of Israel, but they want to defend themselves. They want just to say to Israel to put pressure on Israel to stop their brutality against the peaceful Palestinians here in Palestine. So
Wafa,
So
if you while we have you with us, if you could just tell us about how the feeling among Gazans about all of this. I mean, the Palestinians in Gaza are already enduring tremendous hardship because of the blockade, because of the Israeli siege, and now added to that is the COVID-19, the horrific situation invited by the pandemic, and of course it's the month of Ramadan, which is the month of trial and personal spiritual suffering. All of this is happening. Is Gaza ready for such a thing? Can Gaza endure another Israeli war at the moment?
yeah. Well, to be honest, actually, Gaza is not ready at all for this thing, because all of these situation, like blockade, Israeli blockade, and the COVID-19, the pandemic here in Gaza, and everything actually exacerbate the situation here in Gaza. So it's really very, very hard here in Gaza. But the people, whenever they saw what is happening inside Al-Aqsa Mosque, inside Jerusalem, they just forget about everything. They forget about electricity or poverty or anything else. They just took the streets, and they just speak up and call the resistance to respond. And they know that when the resistance, like fire rockets into Israel, this means that a new war, and they are not ready for a new war in Gaza, because they are already, we can say, a little bit devastated, or we can say that it's really hard for them to have a new war. But they may mean it, and they ask the resistance to respond for this brutality, because they couldn't fear more, more from the occupation. And yeah, I can't tell you actually, like 2 weeks ago, when things erupted there in Sheikh Jarrah, there is like a lockdown or curfew during night, but suddenly you find that everybody get out of his house, and they just gather in a random way, and they just protest and call for sorry, and chant for Al-Aqsa, and the chant for the Palestinian people and the freedom, and they forget about the pandemic, they forget about the curfew and everything, and they just took the streets and the protest. So yeah, and yeah, I think that the resistance here also responded to the brutality from the Israeli occupation against what is happening in Al-Aqsa Mosque. And yeah, I think that things are gonna be escalated at the moment. Like I'm just listening to the Israeli helicopter hovering and hearing massive explosions here and there. So I hope that this night will be not a deadly night like Israel. Oops, I'm not sure if you hear this massive explosion at the moment. Yeah, okay. So I think, yeah.
Wafa,
Yeah.
of course, we wish you and your family safety. I know that the situation, especially in a place as small as Gaza, when the Israeli war machine it's doing its terrible deeds from Beit Hanun to Rafah, nobody is safe. But we hope for the safety of everyone in all of Palestine. I just want to ask you, do we know anything about the family?
About what,
or the people who were killed by the Israelis, the 9 people. Do we know anything about them yet?
Yeah, actually, 3 of them children, and I know one of them. He is supposed to be a groom. Sorry, he is supposed to be. Sorry, pardon. Because she heard the massive explosion.
I am
So
sorry. And
she,
Wafa, you can go if you wish to tend to your children. That's even more important at this point. And you can stay with us. You
yeah.
can stay with us.
Okay.
We can bring you back on the show any minute.
Okay, thank you. Just
Thank you
hold on.
very much, Wafa.
Yeah.
That was Wafa Al-Udaini speaking to us from Gaza, and we had to let her go because of the fear among her children associated with the Israeli bombing of Gaza at the moment.
We have
Yes, Romana.
a very annoying declaration from the UK condemning firing of rockets at Jerusalem. So of course, they call for immediate de-escalation on all sides, but they're saying the UK condemns the firing of rockets of Jerusalem and locations within Israel.
And interestingly, you said that because I was going to read or summarize the position of the of the U.S. State Department here in Washington shortly, where it said that Israel has the right to defend itself, and rocket attacks on Israel is an escalation that cannot be accepted. Do we even need to comment on the hypocrisy of all of this?
As you know, Ramzi, with our news desk, we have been following the news in the latest 48 hours. And we witness, the videos of, the Israeli army, Israeli police entering Al-Aqsa, breaking into Al-Aqsa, firing towards worshippers who were praying during the holy month of Ramadan. For the Italian audience, I often say it's as if somebody invaded St. Peter's Square on Christmas. It's something huge. It's something really serious, but nobody, is saying that. And now, of course, they are, as you anticipated, they're putting the accent on that. So, of course, we have to act a counter narrative, to respond to this.
Of course. Now, there are some relatively strong positions coming from countries in Africa and the Middle East. Quite a guarded position coming from the Egyptians, that they reject Israel's violations of the rights of Palestinians in Al-Aqsa, but it really doesn't go much further, and it doesn't really reach the required level of urgency associated with the Israeli escalation. There is an article of ours that we wrote about Sheikh Jarrah and try to provide some kind of context to this story. It's an editorial I wrote for the Palestine Chronicle. It was syndicated to other newspapers as well, called The Nakba of Sheikh Jarrah, and I believe that you have already shared that, Romana, right?
Yes, I'm gonna share it right away in the comment section. I'm sorry, because of course I am responding to news that
Of course, and I will ask you here in a minute to update us on what actually happened in Al-Aqsa yesterday. But before that, let me just read to you a short excerpt from an editorial of ours. It's a sneak peek of an editorial that has not been published yet and should be published later today. This is the untold story of Sheikh Jarrah, one that cannot be expressed by a few news bites or social media posts. However, this most relevant narrative is largely hidden. It is easier to blame few Jewish extremists than to hold the entire Israeli government accountable. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is constantly manipulating the subject of demographics to advance the interest of his Jewish constituency. He is a strong believer in an exclusive Jewish state and also fully aware of the political influence of Jewish settlers. For example, shortly before the March 23 elections, Netanyahu made a decision to greenlight the construction of 540 illegal settlement units in the so-called Har Homa area, which is known in Arabic as Abu Ghneim Mountain, in the occupied West Bank, in the hope of acquiring as many votes as possible. While the Sheikh Jarrah story is garnering some attention, even in mainstream media, there is a near complete absence of any depth to that coverage, namely the fact that Sheikh Jarrah is not the exception, but the norm. Sadly, as Palestinians and their supporters try to circumvent widespread media censorship by reaching out directly to civil societies across the world, using social media platforms, they are often censored there as well. One of the videos initially censored by Instagram is that of Muna Al-Kurd, which we are hoping to bring on the program very soon. Is that she's a Palestinian woman who had lost her home in Sheikh Jarrah to a Jewish settler by the name of Yaqub or Jacob. Yaqub, she says, this is not your house. She's seen outside her home speaking to Yaqub. Yaqub answers, yes, but if I go, you don't go back. So what's the problem? Why are you yelling at me? I didn't do this. I didn't do this. It's easy to yell at me, but I didn't do this. Muna, you are stealing my house. And this is really, I think this is really a summary, a microcosm of the entire narrative of Israel-Palestine, the entire conflict, the whole the sheer irrationality of the Israeli narrative and discourse on their behavior in Palestine. Muna says to Yaqub this, she says, "You are stealing my house." Yaqub replies, "If I don't steal it, someone else is going to steal it." Muna replies, "No, no one is allowed to steal my home." This is an excerpt from an article that should appear in the Palestine Chronicle very soon. Let's try to get you some more updates from what is happening at Al-Aqsa at the moment.
Yes,
Romana, go ahead.
The situation is still, they're still in Gaza. They can still hear the explosions. In fact, Wafa just messaged me and she said that there are 20 people killed. She is now trying to, of course, hug her children, who are, of course, really scared of the loud explosions that they keep hearing. She said 20 people have been killed by Israeli bombings of Gaza so far. And this is from our correspondent from Gaza. So it's a breaking news. In Jerusalem, the situation today was really, really tense since the very early, since dawn. Because many worshippers slept inside Al-Aqsa to protect it. So after Iftar last night, they decided to sleep into the mosque, and they were welcomed this morning by this terrible raid, and we saw terrible images, tear gas canisters fired at them within the mosque itself. And there are over 300 Palestinians were injured. The Palestinian Red Crescent said that many medics were injured too, and many journalists who were reporting from the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound were also injured. Also because, as usual, Israeli soldiers tried to prevent the Palestinian paramedics from helping the wounded people. They also bombed with tear gas canisters. They also fired tear gas canisters in the female section of the mosque, where female worshippers were praying, and this was also this morning. There are several countries were loud, and they voiced their concern or also their condemnation. Among them, for example, Turkey. Erdogan called Israel an apartheid state and said that this is an attack against all Muslims. And even from Africa, there were several voices rising. We know that the UN Security Council is holding a closed-door meeting to discuss the escalation in Jerusalem. We do not have, of course, still we don't have news from the meeting as of yet, but we know that they were holding a closed-door meeting. And this morning, Antonio Guterres voiced his concern about the escalation in Jerusalem. The United States also, of course, expressed their concern, saying, of course, advising both parties to de-escalate. And this is also there was a march of Jewish settlers from the East Jerusalem neighborhood of Sheikh Jarrah, where, as you said, all of it started starting last week. They attacked Palestinian protesters in the neighborhood of Sheikh Jarrah, led by Israeli member of the Knesset, Itamar Ben-Gvir. We know that he is an extremist, far-right, Kahanist member of the Knesset, and he was leading the attack. And a march of Jewish settlers started to march from the neighborhood of Sheikh Jarrah, trying to reach Al-Aqsa. And a Palestinian official said that they weren't able to reach Al-Aqsa because of the Palestinian resistance. So we are still following what happened after the blaze that we saw basically live.
Thank you for that update, which is based on the coverage of the Palestine Chronicle website and our live blog. If you want to follow the Palestine Chronicle live blog coverage, please go to PalestineChronicle.com. The blog is the main story. You will see it right at the homepage. Click there, and we are updating that live blog around the clock. It's not clear where these images are coming from. Most likely they are coming from East Jerusalem, where clashes are now extending to other neighborhoods beyond the Holy Sanctuary and Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. The disturbing news that we received that the death toll in Gaza has increased substantially in recent hours. We haven't as of yet confirmed that, but our correspondent in Gaza reporting from local sources that the number of Palestinian casualties has increased to 20 people. Again, we haven't as of yet confirmed that. We will confirm the news as soon as we are able to. Indeed, it is now confirmed. The Palestinian Health Ministry says that the number of martyrs, quote, number of martyrs in Gaza has increased to 20. Among them, there are 9 children. We are going to be telling you more about those 20, and we'll try to bring you their names and their photos later on, because Palestinian casualties are not just numbers. They are people, loved people with families and friends and lives and hopes and dreams, and cannot be reduced to sheer statistics. But this is the number we have for you right now: 20 Palestinians killed, including 9 children. Now, from previous experiences, we've learned that, when the number of casualties increase so dramatically at this level, we know that it's going to continue to grow. So this is just the beginning, sadly, of something hideous and tragic that is coming our way. We can also confirm that the images that you see on the right screen, and again, this is coming from Al Jazeera Live Arabic. We thank our Al Jazeera Arabic colleagues for their coverage, their continued live coverage of events, and we are accessing their resources because they are able to be at more than one place all at once. That was from the city of Nablus. So we can also confirm that the degree of escalation is now spreading across the West Bank. So you have East Jerusalem, Al-Quds, you have the occupied Palestinian West Bank, and of course the Gaza Strip. All of Palestine at this point is rising in solidarity with Sheikh Jarrah, in solidarity with Al-Quds, in solidarity with the victims of the Israeli atrocities that are being carried out in Gaza. Now, a lot of people continue to use guarded language, but there's got to be a breaking point where one has to call things the way they should be called. These are war crimes that are being committed in Palestine at the moment. The crime of ethnic cleansing that is being committed in Jerusalem, crimes against peace, and of course crimes against the humanity being committed in the Gaza Strip at the moment, and of course the crime of aggression. So pretty much Israel, any self-respecting international human rights lawyer is going to tell you that Israel really fulfilled all the conditions of all the war crimes possible as defined by international law. And we know that. This is not grandstanding. We know that because we have interviewed Professor Richard Falk, and we have interviewed other international law experts on this very show here at the Palestine Chronicle TV, who conveyed to us precisely that. Now, the question is, will the International Criminal Court expand its jurisdiction, or rather expand its definition of the war crimes to include the latest of these war crimes in East Jerusalem, in Sheikh Jarrah, and the latest death toll in Gaza, which continues to rise. Romana, it would be great if we can get our correspondent in Gaza, Wafa Al-Udaini, back.
Yes, Wafa said that she doesn't know if she can connect again because, you know, the explosions are really loud. So there was a little bit of havoc and chaos in her house.
Of course, and her safety and the safety of her children and her family are supreme. So absolutely, we will stay in touch with Wafa as well, and we will do our very best to address really all the issues that are developing in Palestine at the moment. There is so much to cover, and the news continues to come with higher number of casualties. Again, Al-Aqsa Mosque, if you see the upper screen, the upper right screen here, you could see the smoke rising from various parts of Al-Haram Al-Sharif, the holy sanctuary. And until now, we haven't had any news describing the reason behind this fire and how was it ignited in the first place. The sad reality, the sad, tragic reality is that it seems that the Palestinian Authority in Ramallah seems to be somewhat removed from all of this. There was, and you know, Romana, we have been reporting on that as well. I mean, the fact that Mahmoud Abbas, who has used Jerusalem as a pretense of why he is canceling the Palestine's first democratic elections in many years, it seems to be a mum. Yeah, he is silent now regarding what is happening in Jerusalem. So you care so much, Mr. Abbas, about Al-Quds and Jerusalem and the rights of, you know, people to vote, yet here they are being massacred, being humiliated, being ethnically cleansed, yet somehow we are getting really very little from Ramallah aside from the same old statements, very little action. We haven't seen any political mobilization being led by the Palestinian Authority to create international solidarity, to hold Israel accountable, to demand the Americans to either take a stance or break their ties with Washington. They just do not want to change the status quo that has been beneficial to the Palestinian Authority. They do not want to change it in any way, yet at the same time so boldly cancels the elections because supposedly an election will not take place without the people of Jerusalem voting. So this is really what is happening right now, is exposing the Palestinian Authority's narrative regarding the elections and democracy in Palestine.
In the Palestinian official news agency, Wafa, the only news related to Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas today was a phone call made by Turkish President Erdogan to Mahmoud Abbas. Another thing also in Wafa, in the Palestinian news agency Wafa, it seems that a pine tree caught on fire because of in Al-Aqsa Mosque. So that would be the reason of the blaze that we witnessed at the start of our life. I quote from Wafa, they said a pine tree caught on fire from the grenades fired by the police at random in the yards in the Al-Aqsa Mosque. People rushed to put off the fire before spreading to other nearby trees. So this should be the official reason of the fire. It is confirmed, as you said, that 20 people were killed in Gaza, including 9 children. And also, UNRWA said that, you know, they voiced their concern about the escalation, while the United United States, the U.S. State Department spokesman, Ned Price, said that the rockets attacks by Palestinian armed groups in the Gaza Strip were an unacceptable escalation. So the narrative here is completely, upside down. So basically,
Of course, and those who are familiar with the situation in Palestine, really truly familiar with the situation, can see the moral discrepancies here. The sad reality is that many people who are not familiar with the situation, and they do not understand what is happening, and they do not understand the context and the fact that Palestinians are occupied people living under a system of racial discrimination and apartheid, and they are living under a seemingly perpetual Israeli siege on the Gaza Strip. They do not understand why that position seems to be. We see an injured Palestinian here in Nablus on the top left screen. The top right screen is Qalandia, the Qalandia military checkpoint between Ramallah and Al-Quds, Jerusalem. So as you can see, there are not enough cameras to basically convey the degree of escalation that is happening in Palestine. The people are rising everywhere in Palestine to face this. Of course, the disproportionate amount of force notwithstanding, but they are still rising to in the face of these atrocities that are being carried out in Israel. One thing I wanted to say also, Romana, about this is that we speak about unity. I mean, this is really, really important. So people, if you are listening, just really, and you want to leave, just let me finish that sentence, because it's really important for you to know this. We speak about unity. Why aren't Palestinians united, they say? Israel doesn't have a peace partner because Palestinians are not united, they say. Yet if you look at what is happening in Palestine right now, from Gaza, all of Gaza, from Jerusalem, Al-Quds, to Qalandia, Ramallah, Nablus, Al-Khalil, Hebron, to Palestine 48, you would realize that the Palestinian people, and I emphasize the word people, are very much united. Let the images that you see in front of you, all the screens that we had here coming live from Al Jazeera coverage, let it all speak about the existing unity among Palestinians. You see, Palestinians are united. Now, the question is, what type of unity are we talking about here? These are Palestinians. If you look at this crowd of people who are trying to clear space for the ambulances that are bringing injured and casualty to the hospitals, I presume that this is the Shifa hospital in Gaza, but I cannot confirm. This is the emergency room of the hospital. Now, I'm sorry, this is the ambulances are from the Indonesian hospital. But I do not know where they are bringing the injured, the casualties. But if you look at these faces, if you look at these people, you would realize that most likely they are either supporters of Fatah, Hamas, socialist, independent, no political affiliations whatsoever, yet somehow they are all united. They are united in helping their wounded, and they are united in saving lives. They are united behind the resistance. They are united in love and support of Al-Aqsa. This is the true unity. This is the unity that truly matters. If we don't see these images, I will tell you, we have to worry that in fact there is a problem of unity among Palestinians. But we don't have that. The so-called disunity exists within the political elites, because, as you know, in every other national liberation scenario, there are those people who do not care about revolutions. They do not care about resistance. They don't want to pay a price. They do not want to pay a price, and they want to maintain their lifestyle. They want to sustain their wealth. They want to have their VIP cards, and they want to live a good life, and they are not willing to engage in any kind of costly resistance. These are the people that Palestinians have a problem with. So it's really not the matter of why aren't Palestinians united. Palestinians are united. The question is, what type of unity are we talking about? This is the kind of unity that truly matters to Palestinians. Seeing them all united, Muslims, Christians, men, women, West Bank, Gazans, Palestinians everywhere, and in diaspora, in the Shatat. You see what social media is like. You see what Palestinian civil society organizations in every part of the world, they are up in arms in solidarity with their people. And this is the true Palestinian unity. These unfortunate scenes, of course, we see are from the emergency rooms in a hospital in Beit Hanun, as the sign says above in Arabic. So it cannot be the Shifa hospital, as we said earlier. As you can tell, cars are just zooming in and out, not only ambulances, but civilian cars bringing wounded from various neighborhoods to the hospital. Some are taken into the hospital. Some of the injuries are too critical to be treated at this hospital, so they are being taken to larger hospitals. So sadly, we could report that the situation or the numbers of the casualty is going to escalate, or rather is going to increase in coming hours as a result of all of this, because none of this is being reported yet. The scenes above the top left screen is the city of Nablus, this city of steadfastness and resistance, this rock of resistance, as we call it in Arabic, Sakhrat al-Muqawama, the rock of resistance, is back to its old ways, standing up to Israeli army soldiers. You see them, you see the soldiers all the way there in the back, firing at Palestinian protesters, and despite of the fact that these protesters are, being fired at with live bullets, they are still standing there. They carry their wounded to ambulances and cars, and they come back, and then they carry on throwing rocks at the invading army. The bottom left screen is that of Al-Aqsa Mosque at the moment. Things again are escalating in every part of Palestine. If you are joining us, this is Palestine Chronicle TV, breaking news regarding the situation in Palestine. If our producer Romana could kindly update the information we have on the screen
Yes,
regarding the number of casualties from Gaza.
exactly. Also, now we said that 20 Palestinians have been killed, among them 9 children. And we know that an Israeli drone fired missiles at a group of people east of Beit Hanun. This is the reason why there are so many people injured. At least 65 people were injured, and 3 of them are in critical condition. So this is the updated.
Really, I just want you to look at the bottom screen in Gaza. I mean, the screen at the right bottom here in front of you. This is a mother. This is a bereaved mother. I think her members of her family, along with another woman, could be her daughter, have been brought to the hospital. People are trying to comfort her. We see a wounded Palestinian on his feet. There's just not enough. No, he is one of the same bereaved family. We hope and pray that the member of that family, or members of that family, of that Palestinian woman and her daughter over there are make it life out of this. Hospitals in Gaza, the latest news I'm getting here is that hospitals in Gaza are now all operating at full capacity. They are receiving wounded from all over the besieged Gaza Strip. And it's important to emphasize the word besieged, because Gaza is already under an Israeli siege, and the hospitals were already suffering lack of equipments, lack of medications, even lack of clean water. Again, we reported on this at the Palestine Chronicle about the polluted water at the hospitals in Gaza, and why that is the case. You will find all of these articles on our editorials. And so imagine this situation was already terrible as far as the Gaza hospitals are concerned. And then again, you had the COVID-19 pandemic, thousands of new cases reported in Gaza, many deaths, no new equipments coming in, no doctors coming in, very little help coming in from the outside world. And now you have this situation. It's, really a salute to the brave women and men of Gaza's medical staff everywhere and all of their hospitals. They are true warriors. They are absolutely true warriors, having to deal with a situation of this nature, the complexity of that situation, how compounded is that situation, where you have hospitals already running short on medicine, and at the same time now having to deal with multiple crises. And as you can tell, this particular crisis in Gaza is quite terrible in terms of, if we are talking about over 20 wounded, killed, then we are talking about hundreds of wounded already. And Gaza's hospitals are already struggling. Yes, Romana.
Also, because let's not forget that also hospitals in Gaza are overwhelmed with COVID-19 cases as much of the rest of the world. They're not free from COVID, to the contrary. And they had to deal with a pandemic with, as you remembered, less than 2% of the water is drinkable in Gaza. And
if I may interrupt you just for a second, we have breaking news that the Israeli government has passed a decision to target the homes of the leaders of resistance in Gaza. And when they say resistance, of course, they do not refer to it as resistance. They call them members of terrorist organizations. This essentially means bombing civilian homes to anybody that is affiliated with movements, whether Hamas, Islamic Jihad, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, and other socialist movements in Gaza. They are all going to be the order coming from the Israeli government includes the bombing of the homes of these Palestinians. So naturally, many of these families are now being evacuated out of their homes, and I suspect that some of the deaths are a result of...
Wafa can connect with us again.
Okay, so if we could bring Wafa back.
Yes, we are. Of course.
Wafa, can you hear me?
We're trying to have her back.
Yes.
We can imagine that the connection is not very good in Gaza at the moment. So maybe we can, wait just,
Absolutely. So we are also reporting that more Palestinian rockets have been fired at various targets in Israel, especially in the Ashdod, and Tel Aviv area. No casualties have yet been reported as a result. Nablus as well. Now we also see Bethlehem, another screen that has been added here, where now nightly protests are being reported in Bethlehem, and Israeli troops, occupation soldiers rather, have been dispatched to the Bethlehem area to suppress Palestinian protests who are standing in solidarity with their brethren in Gaza and in Al-Quds, Jerusalem. Romana.
Yes. So we have some news. Of course, Turkish president reiterated his call for all Muslim countries, saying that he vows mobilization against Israeli terror. Of course, there are several reactions in several parts of the world at the moment. The situation in Jerusalem, we don't have breaking news from Jerusalem and from Al-Aqsa in the moment. We remember that there was a fire that broke out in the courtyards of Al-Aqsa due to the grenades fired by Israeli police. And fortunately, it seems that Palestinians were able to contain the flames and the fire, so it didn't damage the site. Now, the really hot spot is Gaza, where we have also a comment from one of our readers in Gaza saying heavy warplanes above Gaza at the moment. We are waiting for Gaza to possibly be connected with us directly from Gaza. She was ready, but I think she has some problems with her internet connection now. But we know that unfortunately, there are at least 20 people who were killed by an Israeli drone who fired missiles at a group of people east of the town of Beit Hanun in the besieged Gaza Strip. 20 people were killed, among them 9 children. And let's remember that at least 65 people were injured, but unfortunately, we fear that maybe the injured people will be even more. So now the warplanes are still on Gaza. So we are gonna, of course.
We have breaking news. If you don't mind me interrupting you, Romana, we have breaking news coming from. This one is reported by CBS News that confirms that, citing Hamas sources, speaking to agency France Press, reporting that one of Hamas commanders have been killed in the Gaza Strip. A Hamas leader has been killed in the Gaza Strip, but the name of that leader, if the AFP report is accurate, reported by CBS News, we do not know the identity of the Hamas commander. You can imagine that there is, yes, true, there is a great deal of misinformation and disinformation, but also you can imagine reporting breaking news of this nature. Many people can get things wrong as well, although unintentionally. So for now, we can only report that CBS...
Even Al Jazeera English reported that the Israeli army, but this is like the voice of the Israeli army, said that they killed a senior Hamas commander in response to rockets fired by Hamas. So this news is confirmed by Al Jazeera English too.
Absolutely, and we will update you on this particular point, and especially if we find the identity of the Hamas resistance commander who has been killed in Gaza. I mean, this is the perfect example, a tragic example nonetheless, but it's the perfect example of how things are connected in Palestine. You can't separate Palestine, neither politically, nor geographically, nor in any other way. And it's all somehow connected. And every attempt at delinking these issues fails in the face of Palestinian resistance. When Palestinians resist, they resist as one. All aspects of Palestinian society rise up to the occasion, and each sector is resisting in their own capacity. The protesters in Nablus and Qalandia are resisting. Those who are thousands of them still at Al-Aqsa Mosque praying, speaking to the media, pushing back against extremist Jewish settlers and the Israeli army and police. They are also resisting. People in Bethlehem are resisting. The doctors and nurses in the Gaza hospitals and West Bank hospitals are also part of that resistance. Resistance is not a single act. And we unfortunately we see this discussion quite often happening, where Palestinians are being paraded for perhaps using the wrong type of resistance and so forth and so on. But in actuality, resistance is a culture. That's really the bottom line. And what you see in front of you, it's that culture of resistance happening all at once. The ambulance at the bottom screen, that driver of that ambulance is part of the resistance. He is trying to save a life. The young men putting their life on the line to show solidarity with their brother in Al-Quds and in Gaza are also part of that resistance. And of course, those who are resisting in Gaza, and those who are reporting from Gaza, and those who are conveying the pain and agony and the pride of Gaza are also resisting in their own way as well. Again, we report that the number of casualties, according to the Palestinian Ministry, Health Ministry, in the Gaza Strip have increased to 20 Palestinians killed as a result of the Israeli bombardment of besieged Gaza, including 9 children.
Yes, Ramzi, and there are still some reactions. United States Senator Chris Murphy expressed great concern about the violence in and around Jerusalem, and called on Israeli and Palestinian leaders to commit to a path of de-escalation. So in the best case scenario, Western leaders are calling for both parties to de-escalate. Worst case scenario, they are only blaming the Palestinian resistance. Let's remember that, in Western media, we didn't have so much news, so much coverage about what was happening in Palestine. But it didn't start today with the rockets sent from Gaza. It started several days ago. It started weeks ago. Since the very first day of Ramadan, Israeli army, Israeli police provoked in any way possible. On the first day of Ramadan, they cut the electric wires that were connected to the speakers for the call for prayer. They wanted to prevent Palestinian worshippers from entering from Damascus Gate to Al-Aqsa Mosque during the holy month of Ramadan. There were some tensions. The Lahav extremist group, terrorist group, marched through the streets of Jerusalem. Then it seemed that Palestinians had obtained a victory when they could enter Damascus Gate. But then, the tension started again in the East Jerusalem neighborhood of Sheikh Jarrah, where the Israeli Supreme Court decided that several families have to be evicted in favor of organizations of Jewish settlers, on the basis of an Israeli law which is considered illegal under international law. This is important to be, this is really important. We have to remember that these amount to war crimes, as even the United Nations declared over recent days. So Palestinians tried to defend and protect the Palestinian families in Sheikh Jarrah, and the protest started there. Then the Israeli army broke into the courtyard of the Al-Aqsa Mosque during the holy month of Ramadan, even on the last Friday of Ramadan. Let's remember that Al-Aqsa Mosque is considered the third holiest place for Islam, and that Friday is the holy day for Islam. So it was a very, very violent provocation, and open provocation. I don't know if you have any news, Ramzi, on your front.
Well, yes, we have been, thank you for that update, Romana. We have been looking here at some reports coming from Al-Aqsa Mosque describing how Israeli soldiers have set Qur'ans, the holy book of Islam, the Holy Quran, have set many copies of it on fire, destroying windows of ancient sanctuaries, ancient mosques and shrines, in while suppressing the protests in Jerusalem and storming Al-Aqsa Mosque. Of course, we are going to be hearing many such stories, but imagine this is the kind of behavior that happens during the holiest month in the Islamic calendar, the month of Ramadan, and it also happens within the night of power, Laylatul Qadr, which is the holiest of that month as well, and that's when most Muslims stay up all night praying and making supplications until dawn. It was the night in which Israel has decided to storm Al-Aqsa Mosque and wound 331 Palestinians, 7 of whom are in critical condition.
Wafa is with us, Ramzi.
Okay. Yes. Hi, Wafa, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. So thank you again. Okay, yeah. Well, regarding, sorry for the interrupt at the very beginning when I ended with you the first time. Actually, because there were so many massive explosions here in Gaza, and yeah, so I thought that like my kids, like felt scared, so I went to calm them down. Regarding the latest update at the moment, yeah, actually the Israeli the Israeli occupation warplanes, they just fired. They just bombed Palestinian resistance sites across the Gaza Strip. So we can just hear explosion from the south, and at the moment from west of the Gaza Strip, they just targeted a site, the resistance site. Like as I reported before, that we have 20 martyrs, 20 Palestinians got executed, got massacred by the Israeli occupation warplane. At the moment, as I told you before, still the Gaza sky is filled with the Israeli warplanes. It's filled with the Israeli helicopter, drones, and all kind of aircraft. So this is the situation at the moment. We can say that, and also the hospitals, as everybody knows that the health sector here in Gaza is a little bit fragile, and so many medicine items, they are just missed here in Gaza. But at the moment, there is a call from the hospitals here in Gaza. They ask the people to come and donate blood because they want, we have over than 50 Palestinian injured so far. So they are just asking the people to donate blood at the moment. And they just announce emergency on all the hospitals across the Gaza Strip. So this is the situation at the moment.
Do we know where the additional casualties have been reported? The last time we spoke, there were nine people, and now including 3 children. Now the number rose to 20, and sadly, it will continue to increase. But for now, it's up to 20, including 9 children. Do we know where these areas are being targeted? Is it all in Beit Hanun, or is it beyond that Palestinian town?
I didn't hear the last question, but you are asking about the casualties here?
Yes. Are they all reported in Beit Hanun, or are there other areas?
Yeah, actually, so far they are just, we have most of the injured so far, they are in Beit Hanun. because we can say that there is like a massacre. Like the first 9 months were in Beit Hanun, like the first 9, and then we have now 20 martyrs so far. But I can tell you that all of the Gaza Strip, like we can just like hear news from all parts of the Gaza Strip. Across the Gaza Strip, there is the Israeli occupation. They just bombed several sites and bombed several sites across the Gaza Strip. Yeah, and yeah.
Wafa, right now the Israeli government has announced that all shelters are available for Israelis who are trying to escape the rockets coming from Gaza. Tell us about Palestinians in Gaza. Where are they escaping? Are there shelters, and how are people acting under these terrible circumstances?
Yeah, actually, the Palestinians there is no place is safe here in the Gaza Strip, and then yeah, we don't have shelters. Even those rockets, or we can say most of them are homemade rockets. But like the mainstream media and the Israeli propaganda try to we can say that try to distort the truth, to tell lies about the Palestinian people, that they have everything and they are just they have like a balanced power like Israel, but in fact they are just ordinary people that they are just fighting or just defending themselves, but by the simplest thing that they have. So there is no shelter, there is no place, is safe here in Gaza. And I think there is a breaking news here. Just hold on. Yeah, we have three. Three people got injured during one of the latest bomb spree. I think the Israeli forces, they just bombed an area, and 3 Palestinians reported injured so far at the moment.
And do we know what area?
In Khan Yunis, south of the Gaza Strip.
Okay. So at this
Yes.
point, those who are not familiar with the geography of Gaza, the Israeli bombardment at this point is pretty much reaching every part of Gaza. It's not just targeting certain areas. It's being reported in various parts of Gaza. Aside from Khan Yunis and Beit Hanun, Wafa, do we know what other parts of Gaza that have been bombed by Israel so far?
Yeah, we have, as I said before, that we have several areas across the Gaza Strip got.
Right.
I think the connection is not.
Yeah. Okay.
This side, yeah.
Absolutely. This is a scene from the old city. This is one of the gates that lead to Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa Mosque. You can see here hundreds of Palestinians are gathered, mostly young people, but also women and children, entire families of people who are refusing to leave because they understand that the moment they leave is the moment that the extremist Jewish settlers and the Israeli army will immediately take over the holy shrines. So they kind of see their stance there essential to the safety of the Palestinian holy places in Jerusalem. An additional screen that has been added by Al Jazeera, and again, we are grateful for this coverage, is that of Ramallah, all the way at the bottom left. So what you see in front of you from top left to right, Al-Quds, Jerusalem, Nablus, Qalandia checkpoint near Al-Quds, or north of Al-Quds, Ramallah in the West Bank, Bethlehem in the West Bank, and an emergency room entrance to the Beit Hanun hospital in the Gaza Strip.
Also, Ramzi, two quick things from the comments. Many readers are asking us, what are other Arab countries do now that they normalized with Israel? You know, so seeing copies of the Holy Quran burned during Ramadan and seeing the hypocrisy of who normalized with Israel is really something that it's really strong, you know.
You know, and it's interesting you say that. Yesterday, I saw a comment by an Arab official. I don't want to claim that I remember the name, and I don't want to get it wrong, but a top Arab official in one of the countries that normalized, saying, although that we reject the what's happening in Sheikh Jarrah, Palestinians too deserve to be blamed for the escalation. This is an Arab Muslim official with who supposedly fasts the month of Ramadan, and he looks at Palestine, its Muslims and Christians suffering in such a way, and yet he holds them accountable for some of the escalation. This must be quite embarrassing, actually. I mean, yes, you would think that you reach a point in which you just don't feel a sense of shame anymore, especially those who normalized willingly with Israel, really willingly in the sense that they had no reason to normalize with Israel. They were not in an active conflict with Israel. They were never in a state of war with Israel. They are living a good life and they are enjoying their billions of dollars, and you know, and not in any way being forced. Like, for example, if you could make that argument regarding Sudan. It's a poor country, fragmented as a result of civil war, needing Americans to allow international corporations to invest there. They are needing foreign currency and so forth. They needed to be removed of the state of list of states sponsored terrorism and so forth, or state sponsoring terrorism, which still doesn't give Sudan any right to normalize with Israel. But what do you say in the case of Arab normalizers in these wealthy Arab Emirates who were never in a state of war, and normalizing or no normalizing does not really change the political outcome or does not benefit them financially in any way? All of this just in order for them to find another protector against this supposed Iranian menace. And here they are having to face that reality. And I remember that we spoke about this a while back when we said, they normalized during the times in which things were, fairly quiet compared to what they are right now. But there will be a moment in which Palestinians are being massacred, and you have to face up to your own people. You have to face up to your own media. You have to face up to other Arabs and Muslims. You have to face up to the entire world. But most importantly, you have to face up to your own conscience. Exactly. How can you possibly be on the phone right now, speaking to Israeli officials, conveying your solidarity with Israeli officials, conveying your support to Israeli officials, showing sympathy with Israeli victims, yet standing against the Palestinian people? Really, there are no words, there are no commentary that can possibly describe that kind of queasling politics of these Arab regimes. But of course, Palestinians are familiar with this. This is nothing new for Palestinians. The Arab leadership have been, even way before the normalization and even before the Camp David and all of that, they were, very quick to issue statements and to make fiery speeches, but never follow that with any meaningful action. So if you're expecting anything from any Arab country, I think you're going to be waiting for a long time, which means if the solidarity does not come from Arabs and Muslim regimes, where will it come from? And the answer is that it has to come from civil society. It has to come from people in various parts of the world regardless of their religion, regardless of their race and sect, regardless of their political affiliations, and regardless of their ideology. This atrocity must stop, and can only stop when enough people raise their voices in protest, rejecting the system of military occupation and apartheid, rejecting these kind of atrocities, rejecting this kind of violence, and is standing in solidarity with a besieged nation that lives under apartheid. This is really what we need from you at the moment. We want you to convey this message to your representatives, to your local leaderships, to your governments, to your wherever you are in the world. You need to raise your voice. You need to make your voice heard loud and clear. I stand in solidarity with the Palestinian people. I reject Israel's violence, occupation, and apartheid in Palestine. Period. I don't want to see my tax money in any way going to fund that apartheid. I want to boycott Israel. Just straightforward, with just outright boycott Israel and ask others to boycott Israel. We need to boycott Israel because boycotting Israel is not just simply about taking a moral stance against injustice. Boycotting Israel is about stopping what you see in front of you right now. These rockets that are falling, these bullets that are being fired. Because if you boycott Israel, then it means practically that the Israeli military machine loses massive amounts of funds. Your companies, your national companies that are operating in Israel need to stop operating there. Israel, the Israeli government, and their supporters need to understand that there's a price to be paid. It can't go on like this forever. And if there's no price to be paid, this, what you see in front of you, these ambulances that keep zooming in and out,
Sorry, Ramzi.
is going to continue. Yes, Romana.
Wafa is saying that she only has 10 minutes, and maybe, we want to say hi to her and, have her
So
back.
let's have Wafa quickly before we leave her look after her family at these difficult times. Wafa, can you hear me?
Yeah, she's here.
Wafa? Hello? Wafa, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
First, Wafa, we want a quick update from you, and then after that, we want you to convey a message on behalf of the people of Gaza to the world. What do you want from the world at this point? But first, please give us an update on what's happening in Gaza at the moment. It seems that there are some technical difficulties.
Yes. Wafa, can you hear us?
As you can see, more Palestinian families are flocking to the emergency room at Beit Hanun Hospital, searching among the sadly dead but also wounded of their loved ones. This is a scene that is all too familiar for us in Gaza. And it's just one of those scenes that you just don't want to be repeated, but it does quite often. Yes, Wafa, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you clearly. I hope you can hear me now.
We can hear you. Wafa, what is the latest from Gaza?
Yeah, actually, the latest update here from Gaza is I told you that the Israeli warplanes, they just bombed a group of people, and 10 Palestinians got injured, and a Palestinian got murdered at the moment. So we have in Beit Hanun, we have a Palestinian. His name is Ibrahim Shimbari. He got murdered. And we have 10 Palestinian other got injured in Beit Hanun. And in Khan Yunis, south of the Gaza Strip, we have also 3 Palestinians got injured after they targeted a neighborhood called Al-Manara. So 3 people reported injured at the moment. Yeah, these actually the latest update here. We have nearly 13 Palestinian injured. We have 13 injuries, and we have a Palestinian got murdered at the moment.
Thank you for that update, Wafa. So, as you heard from our correspondent in Gaza, more casualties reported in the Beit Hanun and Khan Yunis areas in the Gaza Strip. 13 wounded and one additional person who has been killed. And you said the name is Ibrahim
Shinbari.
Ashinbari in the Beit Hanun area. Uh, Wafa, before we let you go, what is your message from Gaza? What is the message that the people of Gaza, the Palestinian people of Gaza, want to convey to the world at the moment?
Yeah. Actually, Gaza need everybody voice at the moment, because we know that mainstream media will never report you about exactly what is going on here. So, and we are really sure that they are gonna like distort the truth here. They are gonna just say that Israel has the right to defend themselves, and then they just defend themselves from the Israeli rocket, from the Palestinian rocket. But in fact, these rockets actually they are not compared by the Israeli power. They are just homemade rockets, most of them homemade rockets. And the Palestinians here just use it to defend themselves. So we have, and everybody knows that Gaza is the most densely populated area in the world. So we have nearly 2 million people, and their sky actually filled with like tens of Israeli warplanes. So I think the coming hours will be so difficult for the people of Gaza. Actually, they are just, as I said before, they just defend themselves. They just defend the people of Al-Aqsa, the Palestinians in Al-Aqsa, that were, like subjected to brutality, and they were subjected to harassment by the Israeli occupation. So they just, practice their legal right. But at the moment, the Israeli forces, they just punish the collective. They punish
If
the
I may
people
interrupt
here.
you, Wafa, just for 1 second,
Yeah.
the scene we see in front of us is of Beit Hanun. This could be Ibrahim al-Shambari, but I cannot confirm. But
No,
yes.
no. This is somebody else. Brahim Shimber is the latest. He just killed
Okay,
just this moment.
and
As
we
I'm
see
talking
a
to you, I
child.
just received his name. These, I think.
Yes, we see the a body of a Palestinian who was killed by Israel earlier in Beit Hanun, and so very quickly you kind of see the scene of a child being carried in the arms of a protester or a Palestinian family member, and in fact behind him there are more people with more children. Um, the little bodies of children who are being all carried to be buried among the chants of the people of Beit Hanun, rising while carrying the flags of Palestine and the flags of resistance, all a too familiar sight um, for us in Gaza. It's just this ongoing tragedy that refuses to go away simply because there are not enough people out there standing in solidarity with Palestine and pushing their governments to end this horrific siege and ultimately this horrific military occupation. Wafa, anything else you would like to add before we let you go for the evening? And again, thank you so very much for taking the time to talk to us while you have children and you have the safety of your family to also worry about. We really appreciate it.
Unfortunately, Ramzi, I think the connection wasn't good. She told us that they only have, she only had 10 minutes of electricity, and I think the electricity has been cut, so we don't have her connected at the moment, unfortunately.
Absolutely, absolutely. We appreciated Wafa. Now, this is a live. These are live scenes from the one of the gates that lead to Al-Aqsa Mosque and the holy sanctuary, Al-Haram Al-Sharif, and you see here Israeli troops and police firing tear gas at the hundreds of Palestinian protesters that we were referring to earlier, who were sitting on the stairs of this ancient monument to disperse them. And we all know very well when this is the case, immediately the extremists come and occupy these places. But some Palestinians are not able to escape. Here are the Israeli soldiers and police officers, a Palestinian being carried, a young Palestinian seems to be wounded. I cannot decipher it's a boy or a girl. It's a girl, obviously. A Palestinian girl is being carried by a Palestinian rescuer. The Palestinian medics now came to her rescue. We do not know the nature of her injury, but it seems that it is not a gas inhalation, but rather a bullet. The little girl seems to be crying, perhaps looking for her family, still holding on her bottle of water, as obviously she was among those who were fasting the whole day and broke their fast only recently. Now the people are pouring back into that site coming from Al-Aqsa. So this is the latest from
Jerusalem.
From Jerusalem.
Another thing, Ramzi, that I would like to mention, because some readers reported that their comments to our live coverage, their comments were rejected from Facebook. And we know that social media are actually censoring widely comments and news related to what's happening in Palestine right now. So Palestinians are trying to reach out to people on social media, because of course the mainstream media coverage is not complete, and it's completely biased towards Israel. But even social media are applying a strong censorship. And Ramzi, you talked about it too in one of your recent articles.
Really, it's just how tragic is this? How tragic is this that Facebook has turned into, from a platform that should be free and available to everyone to do whatever they please, as is the case in the kind of extremism and hate coming from right-wing groups across the world, including Zionist groups. When it comes to Palestinians, it's like there is a person who's listening to us, watching us right now, and ensuring that our narrative here itself on this live feed is being censored as well. And I wouldn't be surprised if this broadcast cuts off at any moment as a result of this comment. But this is just, what is so offensive about this? This is the reality. I am sorry, Facebook, but this is the reality. These are children and families who are being killed. These are civilians. You should be outraged. You should be offering solidarity like you do in the cases of natural disasters or wars in various parts of the world. Why shouldn't these children matter? Why shouldn't this child matter? Why is it so offensive for someone to come and decry the inhumanity of Israel when these children, these men and these women are being killed in such an atrocious way, the way they are? This is not a reality. We are not manufacturing information here. This is what you see in front of you on the screen. These are images. These are videos of a reality that is not being made up. This is it. We are merely commenting on this reality. These are children and men and women being carried to their graves for no other reason aside from the fact that they insist on their rights as human beings, their rights to be free, their rights to justice, their rights to return to their depopulated villages, their right to reject their ethnic cleansing, their rights under international law to be protected persons per the Fourth Geneva Convention. Why is this so outrageous? Why is this so unacceptable? Tell us, please, Facebook and others and Instagram and everyone else, tell us, what is the politest way of describing the scene that you see in front of you right now? When you see children being carried in the arms of their fathers and mothers and uncles to be buried, obviously they were not fighters, these 2-3-year-old babies, they were not fighters. This child clearly was not fighting, he was not threatening anybody, and he was not practicing any form of racism or anti-Semitism of any kind. Can you please explain to me, why is it so outrageous that people are expressing their outrage at this reality, at this tragic reality?
And people are using social media even for important news and for important appeals. For example, there is on Twitter a request for donations of blood at the Maqasad hospital in Jerusalem, because there is not enough blood after days of Palestinians being injured.
And on their behalf, we also make a call to Palestinians and anyone who can hear us, as in Palestine, and can convey this message, can share this message, can write, go ahead and type. Please, if you are in Palestine, make blood donations in the following places: Al-Maqasid Hospital in East Jerusalem, in the hospitals of Nablus and Beit Hanun in Gaza, in Ash-Shifa Hospital in Gaza, in Al-Ahli Hospital in Gaza. They are in desperate need for blood. So if you have access and you can donate, please do so, or convey this message, because this message is often censored, as if it's outrageous to even ask people to donate blood to Palestinians. So let's try to overcome this censorship. Convey this message to as many people as you can. Palestinian hospitals, especially in Al-Quds, Jerusalem, and in the besieged Gaza Strip, but also in Nablus, are in need for blood donations. Please try to help if you can.
Yeah, there is another, I'm following social media coverage too. And Naomi Klein, 3 hours ago, she tweeted, "Speak up, risk position and privilege. Doesn't have to be on social media, but it has to be somewhere. Write the letter, sign the petition, do it at work, save Sheikh Jarrah, Gaza under attack." And Greta Thunberg just retweeted her, saying, "Devastating to follow the developments in Jerusalem and Gaza." Now, Ramzi, this is something also new, like these mainstream icons, taking a stance for Palestine. Do you think that, of course, the images we are seeing, our hearts are broken in this moment, but do you feel that Israel is particularly isolated at the moment from the public is particularly critical towards Israel? Do you have this perception, even on the light of what happened with the Human Rights Watch report, before that the B'Tselem report, the ICC investigation, and all of that? What do you think?
Absolutely, I think this is good news. Just to mention, Naomi Klein is a strong supporter of Palestine. Those who are not familiar with Naomi Klein, she is the author of the Shock Doctrine, one of the most important books written about U.S. foreign policy and the Iraq War. She has been a strong supporter of Palestine. Seeing Greta retweeting her is important as well. I also want to say that I am myself not a big fan of celebrity solidarity, and I'll tell you why. Because sometimes I feel like we put so much emphasis on celebrities sharing tweets and such, while we ignore the fact that it's really grassroots resistance that actually truly matters. But it doesn't mean that we should undermine the importance of people who are leaders in their own community. By the way, these are images of Palestinians being arrested, and most likely Israeli soldiers are not even aware of the fact that they are being filmed because it's happening behind glass. But these are Palestinians who are being frisked and arrested and brutalized by the Israeli army in Al-Quds as we speak. But back to my point, Rumana, I think people like Naomi Klein, not just because of the followers and people like Greta as well, not because of the followers that they have, but also because of the symbolic representation for them as leaders within various aspects of that movement, right? So when they all speak out collectively, it really makes it clear that if the mainstream individuals and media are waking up to the Israel's deception and Israel's crimes in Palestine, it is good news. It means that despite of the censorship that we were just referring to, despite of the misinformation on Fox and CNN and CBS News and New York Times and all the rest, despite all of this, we are still able to convey the message. And we are able to convey the message because we are working through grassroots movements, whether on social media, whether on online, whether offline. That is so essential, and that is so very important, and we need to keep working at it. So the emphasis shouldn't be on the celebrity voices, but on the celebrity voices as an expression of the growing awareness that is taking place amongst grassroots efforts all over the world. So this is important, and we urge you, any one of you, if you haven't taken a stance, please go ahead and take that stance. Write about it, because you never know who's going to retweet it, and you never know what kind of appeal, what kind of exposure your messages are going to have. And it's really it's just kind of a slow build up. Your voice combined with my voice and a million others eventually can turn the tide against Israeli propaganda. And so this is why it's so very important that we keep this momentum going. And again, keeping in mind that there's a context to this story, and the context is Israeli occupation and apartheid that is now being recognized not only in the 2017 report that the United Nations tried to bury by Richard Falk and Virginia Tilley as well. The report, we've actually written an article about it recently that should be also published soon. Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, even the Israeli rights group B'Tselem itself has made it very clear that there is a system of vile, racist apartheid that exists, not just in the occupied West Bank, not just in East Jerusalem, not just in Gaza, in the entirety of Palestine, and today's Israel. Now we see the Israeli army is back firing at Palestinians in Al-Quds. And you could see that there is a woman limping here. It seems that there is a woman who got shot. As you see, the camera is zooming down on her. We do not know if she's a Palestinian or is she with the press. As you can see, really, from that scene, it kind of tells so much about the story, how the nature of the Israeli violence, when they come running like this massive gang of soldiers, they open fire randomly. They just open fire randomly. And you see they are opening fire at people who are not carrying weapons. I don't see anybody even with a knife or a club or even a stone or a rock. Nobody is carrying any weapons whatsoever. So why shoot this woman? Why injure this woman? What did she do? What kind of a threat did she pose to those Israeli soldiers who are armed to the teeth? You see Israeli military vehicles. This doesn't look like a police car to me. This is an army vehicle that is just roaming the streets of So now yes,
There is
Romana.
a behind the scenes of, published by Axios. You know that Axios always has these scoops regarding the relationships between the United States administration and Israel. It seems that the dialogue today was really tense. Axios titles, Israel calls on Biden administration to stay out of Jerusalem crisis. Israeli officials have argued behind the scenes that the Biden administration shouldn't intervene over the recent escalation in violence. And there are some tweets reporting that actually the Biden administration was against the escalation in Jerusalem, the latest escalation in Jerusalem. So we see.
Let me tell you something very quick about this, Romana. When before the Gaza part of the escalation took place, before the violence on Gaza and before the rockets and all of that, this has been going on for many days in Jerusalem. And the strongest statement that we received from the State Department was condemning the messages of hate, more or less. I'm paraphrasing here. Condemning the messages of hate and the chants of hate that are coming out from Jerusalem. Now, this was kind of clearly a reference to the Jewish extremists, because they were the ones who are chanting death to the Arabs, death to the Arabs. But the sad reality is mainstream media doesn't convey to its viewers and their listeners and readers the reality to the point that I am pretty sure that most people understood that message to be targeting Palestinians. So they came up with this really quite lame message, if I may use the word, and they did not even identify the culprits of that message of hate. Now, the latest that came out from them today, aside from the condemnation of Palestinian rockets and insisting on Israel's right to defend itself, is the fact that they do not wish to mediate. This is what the State Department said today. They do not wish to mediate between both sides at the moment, but they plan to do this long term. Now, I wonder why that is the case. Why is the US has decided all of a sudden that they don't even want to play any part in mediating a ceasefire or some kind of a compromise in Al-Quds and so forth. And I think that is related to what you are saying, and you can continue from there, Romana.
Yes, basically, there was also a tweet from Amichai Stein saying that there are tensions between Israel and the US because officials in the Biden administration are angry at Netanyahu over the promotion of laws regarding settlements by the Likud. So, of course, let's remember that the current US President, Joe Biden, was Obama's vice president, and he already clashed with Netanyahu regarding the settlements near Jerusalem. So, of course, this is an old story coming back. And even in the beginning of when Biden was became president, he didn't call Netanyahu for several weeks. Also, there is a change, Ramzi, in some of the American lawmakers are, of course, stating that Israel should stop the violence. And, we have Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Ocasio-Cortez, and all the names that we already know. And as you wrote in a recent editorial, this is more the fruit of bottom-up movement and not the movement of US politics per se. So maybe you want to elaborate a little bit on that too.
Absolutely. In fact, in the editorial, I argued that in actuality, changes are happening in the US, but not because we tend to follow statements coming from progressive congressmen, women, and senators, the likes of Bernie Sanders, Ilhan Omar, and others. But in actuality, these positions are not even at the same level as that of the progressive position of many people within the Democratic Party as well. For example, according to a poll that we cited in the article. And if you could share that article with our readers, that would be great, Romana. In one of these polls, it says that of American Democrats who have heard about the BDS movement, majority of them, absolute majority of them actually support BDS. Now, we know that Bernie Sanders still does not support the BDS movement, although he has quite strong positions in other areas as well. The point we're trying to make here is not to criticize anyone, but to rather say it is the people, especially within the democratic movement, especially among the youth, tend to have even a more progressive position than and more radical position than their representatives. And these representatives are merely trying to catch up as opposed to actually lead and initiate new positions. They are merely trying to catch up with the existing solidarity that exists with Palestine within the democratic movement or within the Democratic Party and within the youthful element of that party more than anything else. So this is really important, and this is their moment. And I think this also links up to your earlier point about the fact that more and more people are tweeting about this issue openly, hashtagging Free Palestine, hashtagging Sheikh Jarrah, hashtagging Free Gaza, and so forth. We are seeing kind of the boundary is expanding a little bit here. And I think this is why the Biden administration is careful. They are repeating this position on Palestine, that Israel has the right to defend itself and so forth. But clearly, according to Axios, there is some discrepancies that is finally happening. Finally, there is some disagreement. But remember also that earlier on, the Biden administration, and Blinken in particular, the new Secretary of State, has made it clear, Antony Blinken, that we will not be discussing, or we are not going to be airing our disagreements with Israel publicly. Now, this indicates two things. Number one, well, the obvious, that they are too scared to air it publicly because they do not want to be chastised and attacked by the lobby and so forth. But also the fact that there will be disagreements, and there will be a lot of them. And I think there could be a caveat that is happening as we speak. Just a quick update: 60 Palestinian protesters have been wounded in the West Bank, throughout various areas in the West Bank. This is according to Al Jazeera correspondent in the West Bank. 60 Palestinian protesters have been reportedly wounded in clashes with the Israeli army in the occupied West Bank. Another update is that the number of wounded Palestinians at Al-Aqsa Mosque has increased to 395. 395. At least seven of them have been critically wounded. We also, as we updated you earlier, the number of Palestinians who have been killed in Gaza as a result of Israeli bombardments of Beit Hanun, Khan Yunis, and other areas have increased to 20, including 9 children. And you actually see some of these children are being carried by their parents and their neighbors and relatives to be buried at the bottom right screen below. Now, another interesting window that popped up here is that you see thousands of people protesting in Istanbul, and this is important. It is important for people to be protesting in Istanbul. It is important for people to be protesting in Berlin, and in Madrid, and in Paris, and in Johannesburg, and in Buenos Aires, and everywhere. Israel has to know that the people are watching and listening and reading, and they are aware of what is taking place. And no matter how much Israel tries to normalize its occupation, they think these normalization agreements with few corrupt Arab regimes have made all the difference. They are under the impression that normalization is the matter of signing, or normalizing the Israeli occupation is the matter of signing few pieces of papers with a corrupt Arab government here and there. But we need to send them a clear message that military occupation can never, ever, under any circumstance, be normalized. That apartheid and racism and violence and ethnic cleansing can never, under any circumstance, be normalized. The Palestinians are sending their message today, from Qalandia to Jerusalem to Ramallah to Gaza to Nablus and everywhere else. They are sending a clear message that we will never allow Israel to normalize its military occupation and apartheid at our expense. Now it's your turn to take that stance. Do not allow Israel to normalize its occupation. Take a stance, take a moral stance, and register that stance. Register that stance for your own conscience, for your own self as well. You have to take a stance regarding justice. You have to stand against injustice. It is important that you do so, because silence is not an option. Silence is in some way a way of normalizing injustice. You can't be silenced. We can't be silenced. We have to speak out. So protest in Istanbul, raising the flags of Palestine, the Turkish flags, the flags of resistance. This is very, very important. We need to see more of that as well. We need to see Arabs and Muslims and people all over the world.
Also, Ramzi, on Twitter, there was a picture of an Egyptian who on his bike put a flag, of a Palestinian flag. Now we know that the Egyptian regime actually imposes the siege on Gaza along with Israel. But as you wrote several times, there is a discrepancy between the people and their leadership, even and especially in the Arab world. So even in the countries where we see the leaderships, the leaders normalizing with Israel, or having deals with Israel, negotiating deals with Israel, but the people in the Arab world are a different thing, and the people in the Arab world stand with Palestine strongly. And we also had examples in our comment section today during this live. So many people, even from Saudi Arabia, they said, but we stand with Palestine, and all the Arab world stand with Palestine. So it is also important to differentiate between the leaders and the people.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, we see Saudi flags, we see flags of other countries in the protest in Istanbul. It's so important that we convey this message to our Arab brethren, especially from the countries that have normalized. We are not holding anything against you. This is, you did not normalize. You were not asked, you were not polled, you did not vote for normalization. This is happening without your consent. And we understand that, because we understand that also the Arab people are not living under democratic regimes. And they do not, and therefore are not represented by democratic governments. Decisions are made on their behalf despite of their horror and shock. And we speak to journalists, intellectuals throughout these countries, and they convey to us the feeling of helplessness and shock by these normalizations. Now this is the chance for these countries to reverse these decisions, to end their normalization with Israel. Recently, there's been reported and now officially talks between Iran and Saudi Arabia in Baghdad. The talks have been rumored, but now they have been officially reported to have taken place, and they continue to take place. This is what we want to see. We want to see Middle Eastern governments sorting out their differences outside the realm of the US and Israel. You need to sort out your differences, because when you do so, you achieve two things. Number one, you minimize conflict, obviously, and you need to sort out the conflicts that are happening. This tragedy in Yemen, this bloodbath in Yemen, this useless war on Yemen needs to end. So we need to see more dialogues in order for these conflicts to stop. But we also understand that the more there is dialogue, then there's the less of the need to rush towards Israel, because you don't need a protector. You don't need the Tel Aviv government to come and protect you, because you have that dialogue and you have harmony with other Middle Eastern governments. So you need to find a way to sort out your conflicts. The US is retreating from the Middle East, and that's a good thing. But it doesn't mean that one bully is leaving, we need to invite another bully to the region. To the contrary, if the US is leaving, this is the opportunity for the Arabs and Muslims and people of that region, regardless of their sect, religion, or color, to find a way to come together and to find solutions to their conflict. And when they do so, it benefits Palestine, because then Palestine once again become the central issue for that region. It is the main source of instability because of this continued Israeli occupation and apartheid and injustice that you see in front of you right now.
Sorry to interrupt you, Ramzi. There is a declaration from the Israeli PM, Benjamin Netanyahu. This is breaking news. And this confirms, in a sense, the fact that this is strongly an action carried out by Netanyahu because he is desperate to keep, to hold on an emergency situation, to have possibly an emergency government.
Yeah, go ahead and read what he wrote.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says that he intended to build in all of Jerusalem, calling it a natural right in a sovereign state. I am saying it clearly to our best friends, and I think he's referring to the United States, of course. All of Jerusalem is the eternal capital of Israel and will continue construction in it, in all its neighborhoods, just like any other nation building and developing its capital. This is a natural right in sovereign state, and we will not give it up, and we will continue to practice it. So in spite of international law, in spite of every treaties, Netanyahu is saying we will continue building in Jerusalem, even if our
and this is what we have been saying. This is what we've been saying for days now. We've made this argument repeatedly that what Netanyahu, the reason behind all of this is that Netanyahu is angling for an emergency government. Okay, so a little bit of context. Several elections in Israel, 4 elections in Israel within 2 years have failed to create a winner. And as a result, they keep going back to the vote, and there could possibly be a 5th elections. Every act, every deceptive act, every act of manipulation, every racist remark that Netanyahu has said in those last 2 years kind of really largely aimed at giving him the voice of the constituency among the right. But the problem is this: the right is powerful in Israel. The right wing is the mainstream political trend in Israel, but it's also divided between various parties. And as a result, he could not win an absolute majority. What Netanyahu is afraid of, he doesn't want to go to prison, because the moment that he is no longer the prime minister, according to Israeli law, he can be tried in prison and he in court, and he can go to. Now he is being tried in court, but he knows that he has that protection, the immunity, because he is an active prime minister. Now he has been desperate in order for him to find a compromise, a coalition government that would give him future immunity, so all the charges against him in the Israeli court are dropped. And he failed, which means that there is a 5th election in which he might not win at all. And this is why, and I've made that argument in the past, he has been desperate for a situation in which there is an emergency government. Only an emergency government, a unity government, can guarantee his presence at the helm of Israeli politics. So so this is why the escalation. This is why the right wing has been pouring into Jerusalem. I mean, there are thousands, led by Knesset members, by the most extreme Zionists within the Knesset. led by the deputy mayor of Jerusalem himself, chanting hateful, racist chants, provoking Palestinians. In one incident, and you know about this, Romana, because we reported on this at the Palestine Chronicle, they go to they put a table and create a makeshift office for the Israeli Knesset right in front of Palestinian protesters in Sheikh Jarrah. And the result was, of course, Palestinians reacted, protested, created, and there was a clash, and as a result of which many Palestinians were wounded and arrested. So they are doing these calculated provocations against Palestinians because that's precisely what Netanyahu wants. He wants to stay in power, and the only way he can stay in power is if he creates a scenario in which he presents Israel to be in mortal danger. Israel is being attacked. Israel is in danger. The Arabs are taking over. They are rejecting our presence in the old city, and so he is trying to rally the right wing, the most vile racist of Israel's constituencies behind him, with the hope that eventually they can reach, or that the president himself of Israel can order an emergency government that would give Netanyahu some additional time so that he can bargain for a little bit more political power, and he can stay at the helm of Israel, the Israeli leadership, a little bit more, hoping that eventually they can reach an agreement that would give him immunity.
Absolutely, Ramzi. So these are, still scenes of violence. The tension is still really high all over Palestine at the moment. Even Palestinians who live in current Israel are, of course, calling for protests in the streets at this point. And, the whole territory is inflamed because, as you said, there is only one Palestine, there is only one nation. And once you touch the heart of that nation, which is Jerusalem, of course, all parts of that nation are compromised somehow. It is also important to remember that, for example, what Netanyahu is declaring is, of course, contrary to international law. As we know, Jerusalem has a special status. What Netanyahu is saying is absolutely not true according to the international law. And this is particularly important in a moment where Israel is a special observee, because like everybody is looking at Israel because of the also the international crime, the ICC investigation on Israel. And let's remember that Netanyahu, as well as Benny Gantz, so the most prominent leaders, they are in a potential list of people who are investigated by the International Criminal Court. Let's remember that the International Criminal Court's investigation at the moment only considered the war crimes. And what's happening now in Jerusalem and, of course, in Gaza also amount to war crimes, as the United Nations remembered in recent days. But the report, for example, the Human Rights Watch report on Israel as an apartheid state would also add the crime against humanity, because apartheid is a crime against humanity, and Human Rights Watch in its own report calls on the ICC to add the crimes against humanity and the apartheid in its investigation, because let's remember that the scope of that investigation can be broadened, can be widened at any moment. And this is also important, that Netanyahu, all the declarations that Netanyahu now is, he is doing, of course, can be added to that investigation in the near future.
Absolutely, and I presume that international law experts, especially those involved in the investigation in Palestine, Raji Sourani and other human rights groups, Al Mizan and others, must be piling up new information, new evidence that shows Israel's additional Israeli war crimes and crimes against humanity to be added to the list of the potential investigation of the International Criminal Court. And it seems that everything that Israel has done to prevent the ICC from investigating all the pressure, all the intimidation, even the sanctions imposed by Washington on ICC judges and staff have failed to deliver. And the ICC has decided, as of last March, I believe, that they are officially opening an investigation of war crimes, the war crimes that you see in front of you right now. Unfortunately, legal terminology, we have to use terms like alleged war crimes, because this is, until it's proven, in court, it's still an alleged, but you don't see anything alleged in front of you. These are bodies of children. These are not alleged bodies of children, and these are not alleged homes that are being ethnically cleansed, and these are not alleged bullets that are being fired at protesters in Al-Quds and in Nablus. These are real war crimes, tangible evidence of war crimes. One thing I want to say that we also have seen, aside from famous celebrities, singers, and actors and actresses here in the US and in Europe speaking out against what's happening in Sheikh Jarrah, we have also seen famous footballers as well speaking out against this, especially coming from the Premier Leagues in the UK, from other top football leagues in Europe. Again, this is important. We cannot discount any such contribution, because each one of these players, each one of these celebrities have a massive following. Some of them might not even have known anything or enough to even form a position regarding this issue, but now they would, and they will, because millions of people are liking, sharing, retweeting these statements. So we cannot discount any such contributions. Everything matters. Everything is important. This is how you build a global movement. This is how you reach that coveted critical mass that you need in order for you to acquire the needed global momentum to end Israeli occupation of Palestine, to end these atrocities, to end the system of apartheid, as in South Africa, shall be in Palestine as well. I think we are going to pause our coverage. I'm not saying end our coverage, rather pause, because I know we are going to be back at one point since the story is developing. But we have been in the studio for several hours now and tried our very best to convey to you the latest happening throughout Palestine. I'd like to thank Romana Rubio, my co-host and the managing editor of the Palestine Chronicle. I'd like to also thank Wafa Al-Udaini, our correspondent in Gaza, and all of you for tuning in, for listening to us, for watching this, for sharing, for commenting, for all of your solidarity. Please stay tuned. We will be back with more information about this developing story very soon. Thank you.